Hi everyone, my name is Yakshini Priya and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be drawing this swan using soft pastels and pastel pencils. Now, the soft pastels that I'm going to be using are the 72 set Faber-Castell soft pastels. Now, if you haven't known, or if I haven't mentioned this before, but initially before I started using color pencils or doing oil paintings many years ago, I used to use a lot of soft pastels and pastel pencils for my drawings as well as oil pastels. So it's nice getting back to it because these have been purchased many years ago. So basically there's a little bit of history in the inside lid of the box, and these are a bit more chalky. So they are a chalky consistency and they do have a lot of dust. So just be aware of that when you are using them. But they are beautiful to work with, and the colors are really very variety of diverse colors that you can use for basically anything you want to draw, whether it's portraits, landscapes, wildlife portraits, or even florals. You can do anything with these colors because you can see the range of colors is really large. And now with the pastel pencils that I'm going to be using, it's the Derwent 72 set. The tin or the art on the tin may have changed. Like I said, these are quite old. I've been using them for many years. This is there's a bit of history on the back of the tin as well, and there's a booklet as well. Now these colors as well, you can see there's quite a range of different colors. There's also a lot of pastel shades as well. So these also, I used to use them a lot before, and I have dabbled in it a bit here and there since then, but I haven't really been using the pastels or generally all pastels much these days. For most part, I'm using all the other mediums that I use. But I said since it's pastel month, let me work with some pastels because I do have them and I haven't used them in a long time. So yeah, I think I did use, not long ago, I did use some Faber-Castell Pit pencils, but I haven't, Pit pastel pencils, but I haven't used these. So let's get started with the drawing. Now I started off by applying strokes horizontally of the soft pastel, but then I realized, I'm going to have the swan. And let me draw in the swan just using a regular graphite pencil, but keeping it lighter, and just draw it in so that I know where to work around for the water. Now I am using a reference photo for this, and I am following that reference photo to get all the details in. The water is a sort of a greenish color, and we are going to do a lot of the reflections and shadows in the water, as well as the highlights of the light hitting the water as well. So we're going to achieve all of that with pastels. Now, because these are soft pastels and pastel pencils, there's going to be some dust, especially with the chalky soft pastels. But when I'm done with it, in the entire piece, then I'm going to just fix it with fixative, and that way I won't have any smudging of the final piece. Now, always remember, when you're using fixative, use it in a well-ventilated area, and also let the piece dry for a sufficient amount of time before you package away in your portfolio. So now I'm starting off, or I went back to the water again to continue. I finished drawing the swan, and now I'm using the darkest green, and I'm just starting to look at the reference photo and look for the darkest shadows now, or the darkest reflections in the water. Now remember, when you are doing water, or when you're drawing water or painting water, water runs horizontally unless it's absolutely still. There will be a slight hint of these horizontal lines blending into one another for whatever is reflected in the water. So now in this case, the water has got a lot of different greens in it, and there's also, like, most likely it is, the picture doesn't have that, but it's the most likely the trees and the bushes around the water that's reflecting into the water. So that's where all the different greens are coming in. So you see, I went with a different color greens, from the darker green to a mid-tone to a little lighter, brighter green, and then I'm just using my fingers to blend it out, still keeping the horizontal direction as I'm blending. Now the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to show that the water, it is water, and by keeping those lines that way, I'm blending the colors into one another. And that's something to remember with pastels. There you just saw me dust some of the excess dust. I just gathered it and then dropped it. I wouldn't advise blowing it away because you could blow those particles into the air and then inhale it. So it's best to just gather it and then dust it in the dustbin or in something that you have nearby, just so that you don't get the dust all over your workspace as well as in the air. So yeah, the reason why I decided to work with pastels, it's pastel month this month, and I thought I haven't used pastels for a long time, and I wanted to work with it, and just basically um, reintroduce myself to it after I've developed so much more. My skills have developed so much more since I used this. Like when I used oil pastels when I was in school last, and then I've used these pastels just when I left school, and I never really used them that much. I used them for a couple of years after that or during that period, but I never used them after that. And I started oil painting and working with color pencils, and then recently all the other mediums that have come into my art over the past maybe 5-6 years. So I've used a lot of different materials, a lot of different mediums, and I just wanted to basically reacquaint myself with pastels and also show you how you can use them when you are doing any drawing. Now you can see now what I'm doing now. It's a layering process with any of my artwork and my style of painting and drawing. If you've watched my other videos, you know I like to layer, and by building layers, you can slowly develop the image, and you can slowly start refining it and making it more realistic, and really capturing all those details that will make the piece complete. So you can see again, I went over with some of the darker green, and then I just blended that in. I am using an eraser just to lift up some of that extra, or erase those extra areas that have smudged around the edges, just to neaten it up. So you can use an eraser for that. And then I use a little mop brush just to brush away the extra erasing dust. But just remember, when you are brushing with the brush, don't go over your image, because if you do erase, try to not go over the image while it hasn't been fixed, because your brush can smudge your drawing. So now I started going in with a bit of white to show the highlights on the water, but then I realized I need a bit more green, some lighter greens to really show those reflections in the water. So I started adding some of the lighter greens, but in this case, I'm not blending them out. I'm trying to keep those stronger lines that I'm applying. So you can see I'm keeping the direction, even with the white, I'm not blending it out. I'm keeping those strong lines that I'm applying with the soft pastels, and then once again gathering the dust and dropping it out. Once again, do not blow on it, because it can go into the air and then you will inhale it. So just always bear that in mind. Also, try to keep your hand away from smudging the drawing. My hand does look from time to time as if it's touching the paper as I'm drawing, but it's not. It's in the air, it's away from the drawing. So I would always say either put something underneath your hand when you're working, or keep your hand away from the drawing so you don't smudge it. So now I started with the pastel pencils, and I'm working on the entire swan using the pastel pencils. So there you just see I'm just refining those lines underneath the swan, just to get it very smooth and neat. That's something that's very nice about pastels, because you can correct things by erasing and going over again, and you can work either way, dark over light, light over dark. Either way you can still work. As you can see, I'm adding the white soft pastels over the dark greens, and it works perfectly fine. I don't have to worry that it is not going to show. It still shows through, and that's one of the benefits of pastels, as well as the blending. If you want to create really soft, blurry black backgrounds, you are able to do so with pastels, and that's something that I really like about pastels. And initially, when I started using pastels, that used to frustrate me, because it's smudged very easily. But I think with over the years now, it's been a long time since I worked with them. I think since 2005, 2006. I don't know. It's been a long time. But since then, now that I'm working with them, I can actually enjoy them, because my skills have grown and I've learned how to work with different mediums. So I'm able to learn how the medium works and understand how it works, and then be able to use it the way I would like it to show in my work, or how my methods work. So yeah, so I'm going in with the pastel pencils. You can see I started off by just adding some of those shadow areas and going over some of those lines that I did initially or drew with the graphite pencil. And then now I'm going and I worked on the beak, as well as some of the light areas where there was some color, some bit of yellow on the body, and I just worked on those feathers and added that color. And then I started like refining the beak and adding the black around the beak. and then just adding here and there some lines on the water just to have those sharper lines on the water. And then I'm going back to the swan. Now for the rest of this piece, or for the swan, I'm using a lot of grays. I'm using between cool grays, I'm using some warmer grays, as well as some very light blues. Now the reason why I'm using the light blues, because the swan has got feathers overlapping, so some of those shadow areas, or the areas where the light is hitting or where the light is casting a shadow on the swan, those areas have a bluish tint to them. They're not completely white. There are going to be certain areas which I will retain white, or I'll go over with the white pastel pencil later. But for most part, the swan isn't entirely white. You will see a lot of other colors reflected on the body or on the feathers. So yeah, I kept it very not loose, but I kept it very simple. With this reference photo, there was not there was detail, but obviously it's a swan. There's a lot of very subtle colors on the feathers, which I wanted to show with the colors that I use. So like I said, I was using a lot of warm grays, and in certain areas some cooler grays, which I used as well some light blues, like really light blues. And then I did use a little darker gray for certain areas to add some of those shadow areas and make them a little bit darker, just to help make the piece look more realistic and make the swan look more three-dimensional. So you can see now I'm going over the body or the rest of the feathers and just going over with the white pastel pencil. That's just to basically unify everything and get everything to work together. And then I'm going in on the areas around the swan. I'm just really adding a bit of the pencil on areas that need to be a bit more green, that maybe I didn't want to go over the swan with the green when I was blending with the soft pastels. The pencil helps you to get more refined and detailed lines. And that's a good thing about pastels and using the soft pastels together with the you could use only the pastel pencils, or you could use the soft pastels, but it's easier to use the pencils, I feel, for fine details and refining areas like I am doing around the swan, and then blending it. You can blend them both with your fingers. Even the soft pastels, you can use the edge of the sticks to, especially the square rectangle pieces, you can use the edges of the sticks to get those fine lines. But basically, with pastels, that's you can use either one. If you only have soft pastels, you can just use that to complete the entire piece. As I said, using the edges of the sticks. If you've got the pastel pencils, you can use them for the background as well. But it's just quicker if you use the soft pastels to cover a larger area. It's much faster. And then you use the pencil to do your details, which will also be much easier than trying to do it with the soft pastels or the edges of the sticks. Although obviously the background would be much easier using soft pastels than pastel pencils. But that's how I use basically the two different types of pastels of this particular piece. You can see now I'm going in with a bit of that lighter blue and just adding it to certain areas of the feathers. I'm looking at my reference photo and seeing where those colors need to be, and I'm just bringing them in. Certain areas, you can decide when you're drawing whether you want to add as much intensity of certain colors or not. It all depends on what you want your final piece to look like. So you don't have to copy everything as it is from your reference, but you can use that for a lot of the guidelines or for guidelines for how you want to get the feathers. So you can see now I'm using some of that darker gray, and that's just to get some of those darker shadow areas between the feathers and where the feathers are overlapping. That's just to help the image look more three-dimensional. So I was really glad that I've revisited using pastels after such a long time. It's been so much of fun using them, and I hope you'd give them a try yourself and see whether it's something you'd like to use. But yeah, I guess that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to like and share. Feel free to comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. Till the next one. Bye.